Doug, your team and yourself wrote the seminal report on NAFTA late last year. So I'd like you to focus on A, is the abrogation of NAFTA your base case scenario? Point number one. How are you handicapping those odds? And then if NAFTA is abrogated, because everybody here is an investor, which are the industries that will be most negatively affected and which regions?
So since I'm talking about trade, I'm just going to wing this and make up the facts as I go along, since that seems to be the way to handle these things, at least according to the President of the United States. I actually do believe that the U.S. is serious about getting a deal. Of course, they want to get a deal on their terms, but I do believe they're serious. Of course, the issue is, of course, going to be getting from here to there, and I still think there's a huge hurdle to get there. To answer your first question, we're not assuming that NAFTA will be terminated. I think even in the worst case, even if Mr. Trump did decide to try to terminate it, I don't believe Congress would fully play along, and we'd probably be in a world of zombie NAFTA, and we've seen this before on certain contentious issues where basically Trump throws it back to Congress and then nothing really happens. And I could see that in sort of a worst case scenario in NAFTA. But I think what's more likely is that the politically incredibly tight timetable means that we're probably not going to get anything done by mid-year, and then it gets dragged out. And in many ways, this is exactly what President Trump wants. He wants the uncertainty that forces companies to, if they're choosing between Thunder Bay and Peoria, to locate in Peoria. In many respects, the uncertainty in a zombie or quasi-zombie NAFTA really suits Trump to a T. That's really what he wants to achieve. He wants jobs and investment back in the U.S. and not in Canada or Mexico. In terms of who would be hurt if NAFTA were to be terminated, our report laid it out in gory detail, which regions would be most affected, and we think there's really no debate about it. Ontario would be hardest hit, both because of which industries we're involved in, and of course the reality that we do the most and are most exposed to the U.S. in any event. And then our next two neighbors would be the most affected after Ontario, Manitoba, and Quebec, and then it really does slide off as you move away from the middle of the country. In terms of industries, first of all, we do not know, because we don't know who would really be affected by special trade protectionist measures if we didn't have the protection of NAFTA. But we're assuming it would be things like the transportation industry, the transportation equipment, I should say, the tech industry, machinery, a lot of basically durable manufacturing we think would be affected the most. I would say I'm actually a little less negative on NAFTA than I would have been about a month ago or so. I think probably the most likely scenario is this sort of middle of the road zombie NAFTA where really nothing happens. I think the chances of some kind of a deal have increased. It might be almost a stopgap measure where we have a NAFTA light deal that basically tides us over through the political uncertainties of the next 9 months. But in terms of handicap, I would give it about a 50% chance of a zombie NAFTA, about 20 to 30% chance of a deal, and 20 to 30% chance of some kind of abrogation.
Well, I think that, I'm losing sleep over NAFTA. I think that when it comes to NAFTA, we are in la la land. I think that this zombie scenario is a disaster. That's exactly what Trump wants, and it's going to be a major issue because you are a CEO of a company. What do? You don't invest. Already the tax system is against you. Money is going to the US, and now you have NAFTA. So you're not going to establish anything in Canada. Everything will go to the US. You are a CEO. You need clarity, and you don't have anything. And this will continue until 2019. So to me, this means that the Canadian market will underperform the US market in a big way, simply because of the fact that this fog of uncertainty is not going anywhere.
What are the odds of the Trudeau government going back and saying, okay, we will actually acquiesce on whether it's, supply management or rules of origin?
There's a part B to your question, which is what is the currency offset that occurs after that? So we receive this big piece of negative news, and then how much does the currency depreciate and provide us some relief from that situation? That's one of the reasons why a lot of the simulations performed by these three gentlemen and their departments show minimal effects over the long run. It's because we get this offsetting currency effect.
I think the government, our government, is showing some flexibility on those so-called 5 poison pills. And when you look through them, the sunset clause, renegotiating this every 5 years, that makes no sense. But you can rework it so you just revisit it, tweak it, or refresh it every 5 years. Rules of origin, if they look at a broader definition of what content goes into an auto in terms of some of the technology and components that go into it, we're not too far off of the number. Supply management, for some political regions, it's going to be very difficult. But when you look at how many people are employed in that industry, it is those industries that are protected are very small. So if NAFTA gets torn up, we revert to WTO. And in WTO, about 50% of Canadian exports have no tariff, and 25% of Canadian exports to U.S. would have tariffs less than 2%. So we can live in that world. But who we're dealing with, what if he decides WTO doesn't stand, and then it gets ugly fast, and you can file complaints in WTO, but they take years, so then it's countervailing. Everybody else jumps on board, and we get the trade war, which is the big downside.
I just signed a relatively low probability to an agreement. I don't think that the Trudeau government can move far enough towards what the Trump administration is demanding on this deal and still achieve a deal that's domestically saleable here. So I actually see them being incentivized in much the same way as the comment was made about the Trump administration. They're incentivized to drag this out and maybe drag it out as far as 2020, 2021, and hope you get a new administration in place.